Thank you very much, Mr President. My question is to the Attorney-General, Senator Brandis. Attorney, you said yesterday that people have a right to be bigots. Today you've unveiled changes to the Racial Discrimination Act which enshrine that right in law. Currently under the Act, racial abuse and hate speech are not criminal offences and are generally dealt with via mediation. If someone is called a chink, a boong, a wog, they can rightly seek mediation and an apology from their aggressor under the current law. Minister, why is this government so keen to take away this basic right and give people free rein to abuse others at will?
The Attorney-General, Senator Brandis.
Well, thank you very much, Mr President. I should correct what seems to be a misconception on Senator Di Natale's part. The exposure draft, Senator, that I released this morning does not propose any changes at all to the machinery provisions of the Racial Discrimination Act or of the Human Rights Act, for that matter. But what the exposure draft does is honours an election promise the government made to repeal Section 18C in its current form and replace it with provisions which are A, more respectful of freedom of speech, including the freedom of speech of unreasonable and intolerant people like you, Senator Di Natale, and secondly,
Senator Brandis, on my left. Senators on my left. Senator Di Natale is entitled to hear the answer. Senator Brandis, continue.
Well, Senator, Mr President, if I may say so through you, Senator Di Natale, there are many on my side of politics who find your views, Senator Di Natale, intolerant and preposterous. But we wouldn't for a moment suggest that you should not be at liberty to express them. But the second thing that we intend to do, Senator Di Natale, is to introduce into Commonwealth law for the very first time ever a prohibition on racial vilification. The mechanism that was adopted in 1995 by a previous Labor government to deal with the problem of racism in Section 18C was the political censorship method, and that is never the way to deal with a social problem, to ban people from expressing their views. The way to deal with a social problem is to ensure that we have, as in this case, appropriately framed legislation which is respectful of freedom of speech but targets the very problem at issue.
Order. Senator Cameron. Senator Di Natale is entitled to be heard in silence. If you have a debate on this issue, you can have it after the finish of question time. Senator Di Natale.
Minister, the government's proposed changes to the Act exclude any commentary in any form that is part of, I quote, a public discussion. Nazi race theories would be exempt as a public discussion on eugenics. An attack on Asian Australians could be protected as a discussion on immigration policy. Racist speech against Aboriginal Australians could be shielded as a discussion on constitutional recognition. Are these unintended consequences, and what good is a law that allows these sorts of hate speech?
Order. Minister.
Well, again, Mr President, Senator Di Natale, you seem to have misunderstood entirely the legislation, because if I may read you, and this is a draft, by the way, that I've circulated for community feedback, there is a specific prohibition on an act reasonably likely to vilify another person or a group of persons. That's new to Australian law. Vilify is defined to mean incite hatred against a person or a group of persons. Now, Senator Di Natale, if those are the sorts of issues you are concerned about, I wonder why it is that you are so critical of a government which, for the first time, it proposes to bring a bill to this parliament to outlaw racial vilification.
Order. Senator Di Natale has the call.
Minister, you're clearly so concerned about the chilling effect of anti-hate speech laws despite citing no real evidence that the fear of a court-ordered apology is stifling legitimate public debate, why then shouldn't artists have the same freedom of expression without the threat of the loss of their funding to associate themselves with a cause that might go against their own values?
Order. 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 The Minister.
Well, as a matter of fact, Senator Di Natale, artistic freedom is explicitly protected by subsection 4 of the exposure draft, but I take it that you're intending to an intended reference to the Sydney Biennale, at which, might I remind you, 9 artists threatened to destroy the Sydney Biennale. 9 artists threatened to destroy this great Australian art event, and they were stopped. So, Senator Di Natale, if an artist decides that they don't want to be associated with a particular event because of a dissociation in turn with a particular commercial sponsor, that's entirely a matter for them. There's no law stopping them. There is no law stopping them from choosing not to be associated with a particular event.
Senator Brandis, just hold there. Senator Brandis is entitled to be heard in silence, and Senator Di Natale is entitled to hear the answer to the question that he has asked. Order. Senator Brandis.
But I'm sorry to hear you using artistic freedom as a pretext for artists to condone artists seeking to destroy a great arts event.